state of Arkansas lived the man known as the Cannibal of the South. No one knew his identity, only the grotesque crimes he would commit around the state and his love for the human meat. Many individuals would be inside their house before dark or travel with others in fear of being the next victim. On a particular Thursday night, Laura found herself traveling the woods. She had been lost in this maze, as she put it, for what seemed to be an eternity. There was no signal, and the more she walked, the more she felt hopeless. Suddenly, she felt a hand touch her shoulder. Laura turned around immediately and found herself staring at the face of a young man. He was wearing a black hoodie and seemed almost invisible in the dark. The man removed his hoodie and Laura could see his face more clearly now. Handsome, she thought, as she stared at the figure, transfixed by his beauty. "What are you doing alone in this forest at night?" the man asked. "I was walking through the woods when I became lost. Can you help me?" Laura was in desperate need of help, and she hoped that the man could assist her. "I can help you, but it's kind of late. You want to sleep at my crib tonight? I can help you out of the forest tomorrow morning." "Yes, please." Laura spoke back instantly and followed him back to his home. It was a quite large house in the woods, and the thought of a random house in the woods surprised Laura, but she thought nothing of it after. The man opened the door and held it out for her. As she walked in, she was greeted by an eerie feeling of dread, but being too tired, she just ignored it as well. All that walking had made her feel exhausted, and she asked the man if she could be taken to a room to rest. The man smiled and nodded before leading her into a bedroom. Laura instantly knew she was being rude, but yet again she was too tired to stop herself. "Make yourself at home. If you're wondering, my name is Kotz." "Hey, I never got your name. Who are you?" The man spoke once more. His voice felt so clean to hear. Being drained of energy, she managed to mutter the word, "Laura," before drifting off into her dreams. Laura awoke into the sun shining on her face. It seemed she had slept till morning. She rubbed her eyes before yawning as she got out of bed. As she did, she noticed the closet door was slightly open, and it appeared that the clothes were obstructing something as well. Laura moved closer to the closet and moved the clothing to reveal a small door. Laura moved her hand forward to it, but she stopped. She didn't know it was the right thing to do without getting Kotz's permission. She hesitated, but finally gave in, telling herself it would only be a minute before she would return back. Laura opened the door and was immediately hit with a foul stench. "God, what the hell is that smell?" she thought as she covered her nose. She walked around the room and noticed various knives, saws, as well as towels spread out around the room covered in fresh blood. She thought it was strange, but like before, she ignored it again. As she did, she felt something hit her forehead like a water drop. She touched her forehead and stared at her index finger. It appeared to be a red liquid. That's when she looked up and came face to face with the reality of things. Up on the ceiling, attached onto various meat hooks, were several dead bodies. Some were missing their heads, arms, and legs. The sight of this mess made Laura gag. It seemed that these bodies were fresh, as noted their flesh were not showing signs of decay. Laura stood still in shock, her hand over her mouth. She could not believe what she was seeing. Suddenly, she felt a hand touch her shoulder. She spun around instantly and saw Kotz facing her. "Beautiful, isn't it?" He pointed to the corpse hanging above, like canvas hanged up for an expedition. Horrified, she immediately backed away from him as he approached her. "Get away from me, you monster. Why in the world would you do such a thing?" Kotz smiled again before speaking. "Laura, you ever wonder how human meat tastes like?" The fuck did this man just say? It seemed like he was ignoring the weirdness of this situation. He was so kind and normal when she first met him, and now he had a whole new personality. Kotz walked past her to the wall and pulled a lever. Laura watched as one of the mutilated corpses was lowered from its hook and began to descend downwards before stopping. The stench of the body was unbearable, and she covered her nose. Kotz, however, walked on over and removed it from the hook and placed it on a nearby table. From there, Laura noticed him reaching into his back pocket before pulling out a long knife. The sight of the weapon put her on the edge immediately, but alas, it was not for her, as the man plunged it straight into the corpse. Kotz turned around with something in his hand and said a single word: "Eat." At first, Laura was confused before realizing that he was holding a piece of filet human meat. Laura was frozen in place. Her fight or flight mechanism had taken a hold of her. Her arms became numb, so did her legs and fingers, which now twitched uncontrollably. What could she do now? Run? No, she would surely bust her ass in doing so. Fight back? But nah, she was too much of a pussy to do that. What was her option? She might as well conform to his demands. Laura motioned her arm forward, shaking uncontrollably as she did, before gripping the knife. Kotz smiled again. "See, that wasn't so hard, shawty. You just gotta trust me. You know, the moment I laid my eyes, I knew I had to get you. Your face reminds me of a goddess. Aphrodite's body of an angel and the definition of perfection. I hope you can understand how much I like you, and I wish I can treasure you with this good intention. Now would you kindly eat and show me what true love means?" The words left Laura's head like an echo. She could not believe the situation she was in and was destined just to survive her predicament. She inched the meat closer to her face, and as she did, the twitching became more frequent. Unable to bear the weight of the decision, Laura flicked the knife forward, allowing the meat to be flung off towards the ground in front of her. "Well, that's not very nice. Say, I'll give you another chance to eat this delectable." Kotz reached forward for the meat on the ground. As he did, he was unaware of the danger above him. Suddenly, he felt a sharp, piercing pain enter his back. Kotz shrieked in agony, cursing while it happened. He looked back up at Laura. It seemed she had attacked him while he was distracted. Now she was going to pay. "Oh, so that's what you want, you crazy son of a bitch." With that, Kotz pulled a knife out of his bag and approached Laura, grabbing her by the hair. She began to cry loudly, pleading for the man to let her live. "Please let me go. I won't tell anyone. I promise. You see, I was just scared. I didn't mean to hurt you. I'm sorry." Laura pleaded even louder. "You know what? I'll let you go. To hell." With those words, he thrust the knife into her heart. He watched as she coughed blood from her mouth before slumping over and laying lifeless on the ground. She was dead. "Shit," Kotz muttered as he retrieved the knife from her body. He had been hoping to win her over and make her his, but now thinking about that, it seemed very unlikely. Like, what the hell was his dumbass brain thinking? Like he was gonna win her over like this? What a psycho he seemed like in her mind. He sighed. Beauty really makes you do and think of really stupid things. He stared at her lifeless body. Even in death, she was an angel. He just knew what he had to do. Kotz, with the knife in one hand, plunged it back into her corpse and began to cut until he was satisfied with the result. Kotz turned around and walked away, leaving the body alone in the cold, dark room. He entered the bathroom and stared at the mirror, a face of an angel with the mind of a killer. He looked down at his hand, which was grasping the fillet skin of Laura's face. He moved the skin upwards before placing it directly on his face as if it was a mask. As he saw himself in the mirror, he thought of her. He had regretted killing her. He really did, but this would suffice. Now they would be together, inseparable, as one whole being. Never again he would leave her side. He glanced back to the mirror and smiled. For once, he felt like the true cannibal of the South.